The Book of Boba Fett. Chapter 1. Stranger in a Strange Land. Open on Tatooine. With its twin suns rising over Jabba's palace outside of Mos Espa. Through the dark hallways. Past the empty throne. To a restoration chamber where Boba Fett lays. He dreams in flashbacks of the early days of Kamino. The death of his father Jango. And his time in the belly of the Sarlacc. He finds a dead Imperial stormtrooper and uses his air tank to get a few breaths. Then, Fett punches through the stomach wall of the Sarlacc and fires his flamethrower. In the next scene, Fett climbs out of the sand. Beaten and exhausted, but alive. At nightfall, a sandcrawler rolls up to Fett as he sleeps. And the Jawas strip him of his armor. Although he wakes, he is too weak to stop them. And they knock him out cold. The next morning, a group of Tusken Raiders approaches Fett's body. And tie him up before waking him. They tie him to the back of a bantha and continue on. Single file. As Fett trails behind, he eventually falls and is dragged on the sand to the camp. Fett wakes up and is beaten by the Sand People while the chief watches. He wakes again at night to find a fire burning near him. While another character lies tied up, Fett notices a sleeping guard massif and makes an effort to escape. The creature approaches him and attacks. But Fett is able to knock it out and use its sharp teeth to cut himself loose. As a raider attacks Fett, he is easily overpowered by Fett, and cowers in fear as his weapon is taken. Fett runs, and the creature wakes up to give chase. As Fett fights the massif, the chief approaches and calls it back. Another Tusken then approaches Fett for battle. Fett takes several hits and is taken down with little effort. Fett is stomped down and goes back to sleep. In the present, Boba Fett is awoken by Fennec Shand. He suspends his healing session in the chamber and gets out. He tells Fennec his dreams are back. But she reminds him of the business they have to attend to. She tells him, they are lined up to pay their respects. Fett is armored by droids into his outfit, which he wears to the throne. He is presented with a gift of money from a being whose language he doesn't understand. Nor does Fennec beyond the word friendship. Fett comments that they need a protocol droid. They are presented with a former employee of Fett's, Doc Strassi, leader of the Trandoshan family. Strassi greets Fett by his title, Daimyo. They are then greeted by the Mos Espa mayor's majordomo. Much to Fennec's chagrin, the majordomo tells them that the mayor offers his humble welcome to Mos Espa as his tribute. Again, Fennec balks at his nerve to offer no tribute. He responds that the mayor offer his welcome and apologies that he is taking care of pressing matters in lieu of appearing personally. Before being dismissed, he asks Fett about the matter of tribute, indicating that the mayor expects to be paid. Fennec offers to kill him there, for Jabba wouldn't tolerate such insolence. Fett declines both. The majordomo accepts openly but warns that the mayor may feel differently and that there may be another delegation in the near future. 2 Gamorrean guards who did not surrender upon the death of Bib Fortuna are brought to Fett as tribute from his attendant droid. Fett refuses to torture them and instead offers to spare their lives in exchange for the same loyalty they showed their previous masters. The Gamorreans both take a knee, though Fennec thinks it is a bad idea. As Fett and a small group enter the city of Mos Espa, Fennec reminds him that it will be easier for him to be accepted if he were to adopt the ways of the Mos Espans. In a cantina, Fett removes his helmet and Fennec tells the server droids that they have business with Garsa Fwip. 2 Twi'lek servants approach and offer to clean their helmets. Fennec refuses, but Fett accepts on behalf of them both. Citing Fennec's advice, Madame Garza personally welcomes them to the cantina, called the Sanctuary. Boba Fett introduces himself and Master Assassin Fennec Shand to Garza, announcing that he is Bib Fortuna's replacement. Garza apologizes for not recognizing his litter. Fett informs her that he wasn't carried in on a litter, something else that Fennec told him about. Fett tells Garza that her business will continue to thrive under his watchful eye. Garza thanks him for visiting and tells him that he is always welcome, as the establishment is his. Fett and Fennec both receive their helmets back, filled with coins. On their way out, Fett comments on Jabba's many vassals and how much ground they need to cover in order to keep his empire intact. He talks about his intentions to rule with respect rather than fear, as Fennec tells him that fear is a surer bet in difficult times. Just then, they are attacked by a group of soldiers, who cause Fett to drop and lose his helmet. The guards come to their aid and help the two to subdue the attackers. Though several flee, Fennec pursues the last two, under orders by Fett to bring him back alive. She kills one and brings back the last one. Fett is brought by the guards back to his Bactapod, where his dream flashback resumes. Fett is woken up and untied from his post, then made to stand up by a Tusken child. He is chained to a Rodian prisoner by the ankle, and the three make their way through the desert, followed by the Massif. They approach a moisture farm. This is being robbed by a gang of humans. They are led to a spot to dig for water pods. While he naps, the Rodian discovers a large subterranean sand creature that knocks the Massif away and ills the Rodian. As it starts to attack Fett, the Tusken saves him. Fett is eventually able to get his ankle chain around the creature's neck and chokes it to death. The Tusken child is overjoyed to bring back the head of the creature to the camp. The chief noticed the child retelling the story. As the tribe gathers around the youngling, the chief offers Fett a drink from his pod. Fett proudly drinks from it, understanding that he is now accepted by the Tuskens. Chapter 2: The Tribes of Tatooine. Open on the palace, with Fennec and her prisoner approaching on foot. Boba Fett interrogates him, but he remains silent, even when threatened with beheading. The prisoner curses at Fett in Huttese. He is an assassin for the Order of the Night Wind. Fett and Fennec are familiar, but 8D8 warns them that they are fearless of man. Fennec decides to feed him to the Rancor instead. Fett watches as the assassin grows fearful of the opening gate. He finally talks and tells Fett he was sent by the mayor. Fennec reveals that the cage is empty, and asks Fett if they should visit the mayor. Fennec, Fett, and the Gamorrean guards return with the assassin prisoner to Mos Espa. Fett presents the assassin and states his business with the mayor. The receptionist is dismissed by the mayor's majordomo, who apologizes for not recognizing their arrival without a litter. He tries to restrict their entrance, but they make their way in to speak with Moksha'ris, the Ithorian mayor of Mos Espa. The mayor seems to not recognize Fett, who demands to know why the assassin said the mayor was the one who sent him. Once identified as an assassin of the Night Wind, the mayor immediately orders his execution on sight. Fett and the crew stand ready after the assassin is killed. The mayor thanks Fett for turning in the assassin, who is forbidden from operating outside of Hutt space. He commands the majordomo to reward Fett. Sha'ris discusses Fett's new position as daimyo, and reminds him that he has no motive to have sent the assassin. He tells Fett that running a family is more complicated than bounty hunting. Before they leave, Sha'iz suggests Fett investigate Garsa's sanctuary. The crew returns to the cantina and meets with Garsa. Fett asks her what has been going on, with everyone including her behaving suspiciously. She tells him that the twins have laid claim to their late cousin's bequest. Fett is familiar with the twins, but sees no reason for them to bother with any ambitions on Tatooine, as they are preoccupied with the debauchery of Hutta. In the distance, a loud drumbeat is heard. Everyone in the cantina stops moving, and the crew steps outside. A pair of Hutts, the twins, are carried in on a gigantic litter. They remind Fett that what was Jabba's, the palace and all, now belongs to them. Fett dismisses the contract in their possession as he is not party to it and the recognized daimyo of Mos Espa. They question his status and present a Wookiee gladiator. Fett scoffs at the challenge, and demands they return to Nal Hutta. The twins discuss killing them, but Fett reminds them that when Jabba died, Bib Fortuna immediately took his throne. And now that he is dead, Fett sits on the throne. He agrees that they will need to kill him for his throne. The twins discuss and say that bloodshed is bad for business, deciding that the matter can be revisited later. The litter leaves, but the gladiator gives Fett one last look before departing. Fennec tells Fett that they would need to get permission in order to kill them. They return to the palace, and Fett enters his chamber and dreams of his time with Tuskens. Fett is training with the Tusken warrior in the desert while others dig for water pods. With some frustration, Fett learns the fighting techniques with their curved staffs. Out of nowhere, a creature emerges from the sads and runs off screaming. It is shot dead by one of the hunters. But before they can celebrate the kill, they notice something coming towards them. Fett hears an engine and realizes it is a train. Several Tuskens are shot dead by the crew on the train. Fett watches as the train continues on, for it doesn't seem to serve any transportation purposes. A funeral pyre is held for the dead. Fett looks on as several speeder bikes go by. Fett volunteers to stop the train by morning, and takes a rifle and stick with him. On foot, he approaches the train yard, where several characters are enjoying their kills in a pub. As a fight starts, Fett enters and begins to fight each of the brawlers, taking them out easily before enjoying a drink. Having taken out all of the bikers, Fett returns to the camp with several speeder bikes. Fett promises to teach them how to ride the bikes in order to stop the train. Fett teaches them tactics, such as how to jump from bike to bike. He instructs the child how to use a mirror to signal them when the train is coming. The Tuskens and Fett ready the bikes and practice their fighting. The child signals them, and Fett leads a crew of 10 on 5 bikes to the train. Marksmen take their places as the train goes by. One bike is taken out, but the sniper is able to take out several train shooters from afar. 2 Tuskens make it onto the train safely, with Fett saving a third one before getting on with him. The 4 make their way to the front of the train, taking out several shooters along the way. One last Tusken on a bike crashes it into the middle of the train. Between cars, the droid conductor increases the speed of the train, but the last Tusken comes in to take out the last shooters. As the train is pushed to its maximum speed, several get lost as the conductor struggles to maintain speed of the train. When Fett enters the front, the conductor bails. Fett struggles to slow the train down, finally shutting off the engine, causing the train to crash into the sand. Fett seats the remaining survivors as his prisoners and demands to speak to their leader. Fett asks if they are transporting Sanzana spice from the slave mines of Kessel. Indeed they are. The leader explains that the reason for the aggression was the perception of Tuskens as uncivilized raiders. Fett proclaims the Tuskens' right to the Dune Sea, and that no further transportation of any kind is to take place without a toll to be paid. Death dealt by the freighters shall be returned tenfold. Fett demands they return to their syndicate with those terms their lives are spared as a gesture of civility, and Fett instructs them to walk to Anchorhead. The leader argues that they would be killed or die of thirst. Fett tells him they will be escorted with a black melon each for nourishment until arrival. When the Tuskens find the water release valve, another moment of trust is exchanged from the chief. At the campfire, Fett is told that the Tusken tribes scattered after the seas dried. The surviving tribes do so by killing. Fett tells them that, as warriors, they should not have to hide. The chief gives him a gift of a small lizard that immediately crawls up Fett's nose. He is told the lizard will guide him from inside his head as Fett begins to go on a trip. He imagines himself walking through the desert. He sees a tree in the distance, with thundering clouds above. Fett sees several red eyes in the tree as its branches extend around him. He recalls his escape from the Sarlacc and the fear of seeing his father leave Coruscant. The next morning, Fett is seen walking back from his trip. The lizard escapes his nose and goes back to the chief. Fett presents the branch he removed from the tree, and it is taken by the smith to be fashioned into his weapon. Fett is given traditional Tusken warrior tribal garb. He emerges in a cloak and is brought to the smith. Fett and the smith work together to carve out his weapon. He returns with his weapon and engages in a ceremonial dance with the other warriors around the campfire. The chief steps up along with the rest of the tribe to join in the dance as a Tusken howl closes the chapter. Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. 8D8 shows Fett a digital layout of the territories controlled by Jabba. After the barge incident in Return of the Jedi, Bib Fortuna took Jabba's throne and divided Mos Espa among 3 families: the Trandoshans, the Aqualish, and the Klatooinians. As Bib Fortuna was no Hutt, he used alliances to preserve his tribute and title as daimyo. Bib also was apparently paying off Moksharis as well. 8D8 tells Fett that everyone is waiting to see what kind of leader Fett is. Fennec deduces that the mayor could not have been the one to send the assassin of the Night Wind. Fett suspects the Hutts. A man enters named Law the Peel. He shares intel with Fett that the citizens of Mos Espa are unhappy with his taking power from Bib Fortuna. The assassination attempt has fed their contempt of the new daimyo. Peel then tells Fett of a gang of cyborgs who use droid parts to enhance their human bodies. He asks Fett to rid the streets of this gang in exchange for double his tribute. In Mos Espa, Fett and crew walk the streets at night. He comes upon a gang who is enjoying freshwater, and have no reservations about bragging that they stole it. Fett states his position as daimyo of Mos Espa. The gang dismisses him as another crime boss. They tell him that they stole the water because the vendor charged more than they make. Fett tells them that they should be working, and it is argued that there is no work. Fett removes his helmet and tells them they will work for him. At that point, Peel emerges and maintains that they stole from him. Fett asks what is owed, and immediately balks at the price Peel was charging. Fennec hands him a settlement amount, and Fett warns him to consider the issue resolved if he wants to continue working in Mos Espa. Fett also suggests he lower his prices. The gang follows Fett and crew back to the palace. Peel accepts his money. At the palace, Fett lays in restoration. He flashes back to his childhood on Camino, watching Django's ship leave. Flashing forward, Fett rides a bantha on his journey away from the Tusken camp. He arrives in Mos Eisley and inquires about the pikes. He walks by several Imperial stormtrooper helmets on spikes. He ties down the bantha and states his business with the Pike Syndicate. He enters and is greeted by a pike officer, the same species from the previous episode that operated the train. Fett is told that protection arrangements are part of doing business in the Outer Rim. But only one party can be protected. Fett reminds him that his protection is also the protection of the Tuskens of the Dune Sea. The Pikes see Fett and the Tuskens as separate parties, and that the Nikto Sandriders are already protecting the Tuskens. Fett states that he will resolve it and remove the Nikto Riders from the equation. Fett returns to the camp to find it burnt to the ground. He sees the chief laying dead, and noticed the symbol of the Nikto Riders, indicating that this was their hit. Fett holds a funeral pyre for the lost Tuskens, and departs with this bantha as he wakes up. Chrysanthemum, the Wookiee gladiator, bounty hunter working for the twins, attacks Fett, who is no match for him. As Fett is being tortured, the cyborg gang confronts the Wookiee. He is able to take him out, but is eventually dropped down a trapdoor by Fennec. Fett immediately orders his injured Gamorrean guard to be restored in his Bacta tank. They hear the Wookiee roar from the cell. Fett and Fennec discuss the incident. Fennec suggests Fett embrace the attempts on his life as he is daimyo. Fett says he needs to respond to this, as he suspects everyone is waiting for him to make a move. Fennec suggests the move was made by imprisoning the assassin. Fett replies that waiting with Hutts only gives them time to plan their next move. 8D8 informs them of the twins' arrival bearing gifts. Fett and Fennec head outside to find the twins sitting on their litter. They apologize for sending the assassin, and offer a rancor as restitution. Fett tells them to clear off Tatooine and he will consider a truce. The Hutts agree to leave, but inform Fett that they were lied to as well. The territory is supposedly promised to another syndicate by Mok Shari's. They agree to return to Hutta in the interest of avoiding war, which they say is bad for business. The Gamorrean guard emerges with Chrysanthemum, and Fett offers him back if the twins renounce all claims to Jabba's legacy on Tatooine. The twins tell him they are leaving Tatooine and suggest he do the same. They tell him to sell the Wookiee back to the gladiators as their tribute to Fett. Fett orders Chrysanthemum's release. He advises the Wookiee, as an ex-bounty hunter, not to work for scugholes like the Hutts. Chrysanthemum begrudgingly heads out on foot. Fennec asks Fett what their next move is. Fett thinks infighting among their enemies would help the Hutts, and finds it suspicious they would be leaving. Fennec decides to arrange for a meeting with the mayor. Fett brings the rancor down to its holding cell. The rancor keeper explains that the beast is depressed, and explains the emotional complexity of rancors. He tells Fett that this rancor is a calf, bred from champions to be used for fighting, but he saved it for himself to train. The rancor wears blinders because it imprints on the first human it sees. Fett approaches the rancor and pets it affectionately. The keeper tells him that the rancor are good for much more than fighting, recalling the legend that the witches of Dathomir would ride them. Fett wants to learn how to ride it the way he learned how to ride the bantha, which is much larger. The keeper has him stand in front of the rancor. Fett and the rancor regard each other, and Fett begins to become enamored of the beast, nearly dismissing 8D8 as he approaches with news. Mok-Shari's is not available for at least 20 days. Fett orders the ranker be fed, and prepares Fennec for a trip to Mos Espa. The keeper tells the ranker that Fett will be back. In Mos Espa, Fett and Fennec arrive with 4 of the cyborg gang on speeder bikes. The Majordomo once again runs them around before meeting with Mok-Shari's privately. When he locks the door behind him, Fennec picks the lock to find that the room is empty. They come outside to find the Majordomo driving off in a speeder. Fennec sends the bike gang after him. They manage to corner him after doing a great deal of property damage. Fett demands the location of the mayor, and is told he is working with the Pikes. The Pike Syndicate arrives on Tatooine as one of the cyborgs informs Fett and Fennec. Fennec suggests that the Pikes arriving now are only the first wave. She tells Fett that the Pikes are preparing for war, and he responds that they will be ready. Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. Fett sleeps in his Bacta tank and flashes back to wandering the desert en his bantha after seeing the massacre by the Kintan Stiders speeder bike gang. Fett comes to Jabba's palace and takes aim with a rifle before walking away. He decides to take his bantha to get food instead. Fett feeds the bantha some meat when he notices a distant explosion. Fett follows the fallen object to discover Fennec Shand. Fett carries Fennec to Mos Eisley. He brings her to the mod parlor where the cyborg gang gets their upgrades. He tasks them with modifying her. The surgeon gets to work on her immediately once presented with immediate payment. He completes the work, and Fett takes her back to the desert. When she awakes, he immediately presents her with a black melon pod and tells her how he found her. Though reluctant at first, he convinces her to drink from the pod. Fett identifies her as the bounty hunter she is known to be, and assures her he is not interested in collecting a bounty on her. She does not believe that he is Fett, thinking him dead. Fett recalls his rescue by the Tusken tribe, but Fennec doubts the Tuskens would lose to a gang of bikers. Fett asks her help to recover his firespray gunship, FKA the Slave Eye. He tells her it remains parked at Jabba's palace. Fennec tells him that Bib Fortuna now sits Jabba's throne, but Fett feels hesitant about simply asking for it back. Fennec agrees to help him in exchange for her debt to him for saving her life. He says, "If that is what you wish." The two approach the palace on the bantha. Fennec sends a probe droid to survey the area. As the probe explores the palace, Fett releases his bantha in preparation to infiltrate. Fennec questions Fett's motive in releasing his ride. Fett reminds her that it's a life-or-death mission for him. He plans to kill Bib Fortuna and leave with his ship. Fennec reminds him that bounty hunters like them get to decide when they're finished. The probe returns and gives an outlay of the area where the ship is docked. It shows them vast number of guards that stand in their way. But Fennec suggests they go in quietly if they are to be successful. She leads him into the palace. As food is being prepared in the kitchen, the chef droids investigate a disturbance and are engaged by Fett. He and Fennec take out the chef droids and continue on. As they are leaving, a rat catcher droid enters and runs from Fett before Fennec helps him to catch it. Fett threatens it, but the scared droid shuts itself down for fear of further abuse. Fett and Fennec approach the ship, where two Gamorrean guards find them. After taking them out, the alarm is sounded, and many more guards appear. Fennec tells Fett she will cover him while he checks the ship's flyability. While Fennec handles the guards, Fett gets the ship started and picks up Fennec. He cannot see and needs to find the gate in order to get out. Meanwhile, Fennec fights several guards who try to board the ship. She shoots the gate release and the two leave the palace. Fett sees the ship in good shape and decides to maintain his secrecy. Fennec asks to stay with him. Fett tracks down the Quinton Stiders gang and picks him off effortlessly with his gunship. He then approaches the Sarlacc pit, where he believes his armor to be. As it is Beskar, there is no worry of it deteriorating in the stomach. But his scanners don't pick up anything. As he gets closer, the Sarlacc awakens and tries to drag the ship into the sand. Fennec drops a pulse bomb into the Sarlacc's mouth, and it explodes. Fett investigates the stomach, but doesn't find anything. Fennec suggests he give up the search for his armor. Fett describes his plan to build a house of bounty hunters to lower the amount of unnecessary deaths due to poor management. Fett offers Fennec his loyalty to her in exchange for her work. Fennec doubts his motives, but Fett reminds her that being with the Tuskens reminded him that you can only get so far without a tribe. Fett wakes up after a flashback to killing Bib Fortuna and sitting the throne. His droid reports full recovery. Fennec arrives and reports that the Majordomo is cooperating with her, but has no knowledge of where the mayor is. He decides to make an appearance in Mos Espa so as not to make it seem like there is a power vacuum. At a cantina, Chrysanthemum sits and drinks while watching a group win at a table game. In a rage, Chrysanthemum beats up the players before being stopped by Garza. She praises his strength, but reminds him that he is not to kill innocent Trandoshans. She agrees to cover his bar tab if he leaves. Chrysanthemum rips off the Trandoshan's arm before paying his bill and leaving. Fett thanks Garza and follows Chrysanthemum outside. He offers the Wookiee a job at the palace. Fennec speaks to Jabba's former captains, suggesting they listen to Boba Fett. Fett warns the group of the Pike Syndicate, and the way they absorbed Tatooine into their spice trade, bribing the mayor of Mos Espa to keep the city in poverty. Although there is brief unrest, the rancor quickly makes its presence known, and Fett feeds it as the others watch in shock. Fett proposes the families of Mos Espa join forces to defeat the Pike Syndicate. It is argued that they are only a nuisance to Fett, but Fett makes a stand that he plans to wipe out the Pike Syndicate alone or together. He only asks their neutrality if bribed to betray him. The captains find the proposal acceptable. As they all leave, Fett suggests they prepare for war. Fennec tells him they can buy muscle if they know where to look. Chapter 5: Return of the Mandalorian. Din, Mando, Djarin enters a meatpacking facility. He meets with Kaba Baze to collect him for a bounty. Baze denies his identity, but Mando presses him. Some workers attack him, but Mando makes work of them with the Darksaber and the help of his Beskar armor. He accidentally cuts his leg with the Darksaber after killing one of the assailants. As Mando leaves with the head of Baze, he offers the rest of the workers the remains of their former boss's wealth in exchange for safe passage. They abide and Mando leaves. On the starport, a circular mechanical facility in space, Mando limps toward an elevator with the head in a bag. He arrives on his floor, delivers the bounty, and requests information about the access shaft to the substrata. Mando leaves and heads down. He uses his scanners to locate an armorer, who orders Paz Vizsla to tend to his wound. He presents the Darksaber to the armorer as the weapon that injured him. She tells him the legend of the Darksaber, and how it was forged by Tar Vizsla, a Mandalorian Jedi. Mando tells the armorer of his encounter with Luke Skywalker, and the armorer welcomes him join their covert as they rebuild. Mando agrees. and the three join in saying, "This is the way." Paz asks Mando how he obtained the Darksaber, and whether he killed Moff Gideon. Mando tells him that Gideon is being interrogated by the New Republic and will face justice for his crimes. Paz and the armorer agree that Gideon deserved to die. Mando suggests execution after tribunal. The armorer says, "We shall see," and fires up the kiln. She tells Mando about the mythosaur and the legend of its return before asking him about the Beskar spear. She tells him that it can pierce Beskar armor, and is, therefore, a threat to all Mandalorians. Mando tells her to forge it into armor. He asks the armorer about Bo-Katan Kryze. She tells him that Bo-Katan was a cautionary tale of power, as she was gifted the sword, and did not won by creed as is the way. The armorer decries the actions of Bo-Katan's family, claiming they lost sight of the way and the Mandalorians lost their world. The armorer tells of their sect and how it managed to survive the Great Purge of the Empire. In a flashback to The Night of 1,000 Tears, the armorer recalls Mandalore being decimated by Imperial interlopers. She says that only those who walked the way were able to escape the prophesied curse, though they still lost many. Mando asks her to build something for Grogu. As a small package is put together, Mando trains his Darksaber skills with the armorer. It is too heavy for him, and the armorer suggests his mind is not focused enough. Paz enters and challenges Mando for it. The armorer asks if he agrees to the duel, and he does. Paz and Mando remove their jetpacks and fight. Though inexperienced with the Darksaber, and still slowed by its weight, Mando loses the blade to Paz. But in his arrogance he makes a vengeful attempt to kill Mando with the Darksaber. Not realizing how difficult it would be, Mando quickly regains the upper hand and the armorer stops the fight, asking if Mando has ever removed his helmet. He confesses that he has, and the armorer declares him a Mandalorian no more. Mando takes the Darksaber and his jetpack before departing. He gets on a transport to Tatooine, which requires him to turn in all weapons. Once he arrives at Mos Eisley, he goes to visit Peli Motto, saving her from a wild Womprat. She tells him she found a replacement for his spaceship. She reveals a single-pilot fighter ship from the Naboo fleet. The ship is not completely repaired, but she offers some selling points. She convinced him to help her to fix the ship, and he works with her droids. Peli introduces Mando to a group of Jawas who agree to look for parts at their request the rebuild and modify the ship. Peli shares with Mando how everything has gone to hell since the Pikes started moving their spice through the system. The finished ship has an open area in place of the droid port. Since Mando doesn't use pilot droids, he gets into the pilot seat and starts the ship. He takes it up and out for a test drive. He flies the starfighter through Beggar's Canyon to test the handling. He takes the ship into outer space and is enjoying himself until he gets pulled over by two X-Wing officers. As they ask him about his ship, one of the pilots recognizes Mando's voice and asks if he would be willing to answer some questions about the incident on Navarro. Mando engages the sublight thrusters to fly away, and the officers decide not to report it, as Mando returns to Peli's, where he is immediately approached by Fennec Shand. She passes him a bag of credits and enlists his aid to help Boba Fett. Mando agrees to help for free, but tells her he wants to visit a small friend first. Chapter 6. From the desert comes a stranger. Open on Mos Pelgo. A group of Pike, spice traders, are examining their take from a moisture farm. They brag about leaving the spice and taking their money back to Mos Eisley. Marshal Cobb Vanth engages them and quickly kills all but one, who he allows to take the credits, but with a warning to never trespass on Mos Pelgo again. After the Pike leaves the spice box and departs, Cobb opens it to find the box contains only sand. Mando travels to a forest planet in the Naboo fighter. He closes in on a signal being transmitted by R2-D2, who guides him to a landing site. Mando asks about Skywalker and explains his business, that he is there to see Grogu. On their way, Mando observes several large ant droids that are carrying stones to a location where a Jedi temple is being built. As Mando asks what is going on, R2 shuts off. Mando asks the ant droids where Skywalker is as they quickly build him a bench. With no other options, Mando takes a seat. Elsewhere, Grogu is training with Luke Skywalker. Grogu breaks his concentration to hold a cycloptic frog in the air. Luke calls him on it, but then shows how focusing his energy can enable him to lift as many frogs as there are around them. As Grogu watches in amazement, Luke ends the lesson and they take a walk. He begins to tell Grogu about Yoda, and reminds him that size matters not. Luke asks Grogu if he recalls anyone talking like that back home. When Grogu doesn't respond, Luke asks if he would like to remember. Grogu allows Luke to help him remember. Grogu flashes back to the Jedi executions of Order 66. He recalls seeing Padawans murdered by clone troopers before they close in on him. When Grogu wakes up, Luke tells him that the galaxy is a dangerous place and that he will teach him to protect himself. Mando wakes from his nap and meets with Ahsoka Tano. She explains to Mando that R2 brought him to see her instead of Grogu. She tells him about the Jedi Temple being built by the droids, and how Grogu will be its first student. Mando tells her that he wants to see the kid, and she takes him on a walk. She reminds him of her warning regarding his attachment to the child. Mando explains that Grogu was a Mandalorian foundling in his care, and he only wants to make sure he's okay. Ahsoka takes him to an area where he can see Grogu training with Luke in the distance, but stops him from going to see him. She asks if he is giving Grogu the gift so that he will remember him. Mando honestly responds that it is only to protect him, and tells her that it is armor. Ahsoka explains to Mando that Grogu misses him, too, and that seeing him will only make things more difficult for Grogu. Mando reluctantly leaves the package with Ahsoka and leaves. Grogu notices Mando's ship leaving and reaches out to it. Luke sets Grogu down and tells him to jump up and down in an effort to feel the Force flow in upward and downward motion. Not fully understanding, Grogu overthinks the action. Luke tells Grogu, "Don't try. Do." Luke takes Grogu with him on a run through a forest, and climbs a tree to show Grogu all the life there is on the planet, and how the Force flows through everything. He tells Grogu how the Force will help him to find balance. Later, Luke trains Grogu's balance using the Force on a tree near a swamp. As Grogu learns to balance on one leg, Luke practices his lightsaber techniques. Luke then gives Grogu the training remote, which shoots at him to train his jumping skills. As Grogu trains with the remote, Ahsoka approaches Luke and commends him on Grogu's progress. He tells her the Mandalorian was here, which she tells him she told him. She presents Luke with a gift. Luke looks on Grogu and says he sometimes doesn't think his heart is in it. Ahsoka replies, "So much like your father." He asks what he should do about Grogu as the latter lays down for a nap. Ahsoka tells him to trust his instincts. Luke asks her if he will see her again. She tells him, "Perhaps. May the Force be with you," and leaves. Mando returns to Tatooine, flying directly to Fett's palace hangar. When he tells the Gamorrean guard that Fennec sent him, he is led to the meeting where she is explaining the plan. The group includes Fett, Cressanton, and several cyborg mods. Fennec explains that the Pike Syndicate has been gathering soldiers, and Mok Shurry's is conveniently off-world. Mando arrives and is introduced by his name Din Djarin. Fennec suggests that he and Cressanton add enough muscle to the team to act as enforcers. Mando suggests he can help by flying to Mos Pelgo. He meets with Cobb, who immediately recognizes the ship and asks about Grogu. Mando asks Cobb to lead a garrison of his people. Cobb eventually concedes that he will do what he can. As soon as Mando leaves, Cobb calls for a meeting of all fighting-age men and women in his town. Cobb notices a figure walking in from the distance, and has everybody gather inside. Out of sight, the deputy attempts to assist but is ordered again to retire inside. The titular stranger identifies Cobb and offers him double what Fett offered to have everyone in Mos Pelgo stay put. As the deputy brazenly attempts to admonish the offer, Cobb asks the stranger his name. The figure looks up and warns Cobb to be careful whose business he minds. He tells Cobb that Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked for the Empire. Cobb tells the stranger to move his spice runners out of Tatooine. As the two prepare to draw, the deputy distracts Cobb, giving the stranger an opportunity to shoot Cobb once, and the deputy a few more rounds. As the citizens come out in shock, the stranger tells them, Tatooine belongs to the Syndicate. As long as the spice keeps running, everyone will be left alone. He departs. Two Pike Syndicate members enter Garsa's sanctuary carrying a Camtono parcel. Garsa nervously watches them, as a waiter is serving drinks. The two leave the sanctuary, without their Camtono, which immediately explodes. Garsa's sanctuary is destroyed in the blast, and everyone in it is presumably killed. Luke presents Grogu with the armor Mando wanted him to have. The Mandalorian's gift is Beskar chainmail armor to be worn over Grogu's body. Luke tells Grogu that he can choose between the armor and returning to the Mandalorian way or choosing Yoda's lightsaber to continue in the ways of the Jedi as the first student in Luke's academy. Grogu's choice is unknown as the episode ends. Chapter 7, Finale. Open on Mos Espa. The morning after the destruction of Garsa's sanctuary, Fett and Fennec investigate the damage. Fett comments that there may not be much left of the city to save by the time they are done with the Pike Syndicate. At that point, Mando arrives, and informs them of his arrangement with Cobb Vanth. Fennec disagrees with shutting down the operation completely, as there is money to be made from the orange spice. Fett sides with Mando and supports the plan, but knows they need the reinforcements to face the Syndicate. The mods suggest Fett and the rest wait at the ruin of the cantina rather than flee back to the palace. Fett agrees to stay. Cad Bane, the stranger, enters Mos Espa. He walks in on Mok Shurry's pleading with the Pike Syndicate to allow him to speak to respond. Cad tells him they won't have to worry about Freetown, and Shurry's asks if he was able to convince him to remain neutral without disclosing his actions. Cad confirms Shurry's asks if there are more resources for Fett to have called from. Citing the Tuskens, the Pike leader says that it was the Syndicate which killed the tribe, making it look like the Nikto Raiders, and informs Cad that Fett does not know. Sharis asks when the conflict will be over, and scolds the Pike for bombing Garce's sanctuary without permission. The Pike is aware that Fett's Gotra is residing in the ruins of the cantina, and Cad suggests an idea to draw Fett out. An X-Wing with an R2 unit lands at Peli Mottos. It is piloted by Grogu and R2-D2. Peli recognizes him and comments on the astromech autopilot. R2 asks where Mando is. Peli picks up Grogu, and notices the Beskar mail, indicating the choice he made. Peli seats Grogu and feeds him. At the cantina, Fennec discusses the situation while she, Fett and Mando wait on Vanth and the Pike Syndicate. Mok Shaze's Majordomo is present as well. Fennec comments on Fett's arrangement with the three families to remain neutral in exchange for peaceful operations in Mos Espa, saying it will give them an opportunity to see the Syndicate's numbers before they see them. It is revealed that the Gamorrean guards watch the ship ports, while Cressanton watches the streets of the Trandoshan territory, in front of Mos Espa City Hall, and the mods patrol the streets of the working districts on their hover bikes. 8D8 arrives to introduce Cad Bane, who is waiting on Fett in the square. Fett emerges with his blaster at the ready, and attempts to dismiss Cad. Cad replies by offering to negotiate on behalf of the Pikes. Fett recognizes him and turns down the negotiation, calling him a gutless murderer. Cad tells Fett about his visit to Freetown, and how he should never have taken back the armor. As Mando and Fennec emerge from behind, Cad refers to his own back shooters. He repeats his offer to allow the spice to run through Mos Espa. Fett refuses, requesting to speak to the head of the Syndicate. Cad takes the opportunity to tell him about the framing of the Speedbike gang. Cad calls for a standoff. Fett readies himself, but Fennec tells him not to shoot. Fett agrees with her and Cad leaves. Fett receives a transmission from the mods as the locals start to shoot at them. As Fett calls to Cressanton, several Trandoshans reveal their weapons and start to gang up. At the station, the Gamorreans notice several other locals preparing to strike. The Gamorrean guards are pushed over a cliff. The Majordomo reveals that the Pike Syndicate operates out of the Desert Survey Office of Mos Eisley. Fennec leaves on a speeder bike. Cressanton is attacked by several Trandoshans as the mods continue their standoff. Fennec snipe shots their foes and sends them to the sanctuary. The mods are genuinely grateful to Fennec, an emotion she happily reflects. Several Pikes arrive outside the cantina. Mando alerts Fett to their presence, and Fett asks if Cad Bane is with them. He is not. Fett comments that all three families turned on them, but agrees with Mando that it was the smarter move. Fett suggests Mando leave, but Mando stays, citing the creed. He gave his word to Fett that he would help. Fett says he gave his word to the people that he would not abandon Mos Espa. Before they begin shooting, the Majordomo offers to negotiate terms for them to leave the planet. Fett takes the tablet and inscribes his terms. The Majordomo present the terms of nothing to the Pike Syndicate in exchange for them to leave the planet with their spice trade, or face mass death. Mando and Fett then fly out on their jetpacks, taking out all the Pikes by themselves. Their Beskar armor takes many hits, but they continue to fight on. As it begins to look bleak for them, the Freetown garrison arrives on a small armed transporter, which provides them cover. The bartender shares that Cobb Vanth was gunned down in cold blood. The mods arrive to help, followed soon after by Cressanton. Fett goes to save the Wookiee, and promises him a session in his Bacta tank to recover. The Pikes retreat as Scorpinek-shielded gun droids arrive. Not even Fett's back missile can take out their shields. Fett and Mando fly away after the garrison runs to safety. Mando tries to use the darksaber to break the shield. But he cannot. Fett suggests they get reinforcements. But Mando reminds him he's run out of friends. Fett tells Mando to hold off the assault until he gets back. And flies off. Mando distracts one of the droids while Cressanton, quickly recovered without the back-to-tank, attempts to flank the other one unsuccessfully. The mods help him up as more Pikes enter the city. Mando continues to draw away the fire of the droid when Peli arrives. Mando helps her get away. The Freetowners and Mos Espa fighters fall back and strategize together how to fight the droid. Mando is reunited with Grogu, who leaps into his arms upon seeing him. Mando notices that he is wearing the Beskar shirt, but Peli reminds him of the droid in pursuit. Grogu tries to help them go faster, but accidentally causes their cart to crash, leaving Mando and Peli to stand alone against the droid. The roar of the Rancor is heard as it arrives with Fett riding its back, equipped with his Tusken spear and a fresh missile. The Rancor handles the droids as Mando puts Grogu down. He single-handedly lights the darksaber and enters the droid shield to take out the shield generator. Grogu steps out and targets the droid, using the Force to pull out a ball bearing that helped it to stand. Fett has the Randor finish the job. Meanwhile, the other droid continues to shoot at the garrison as the latter manages to pick off more and more of the Pikes. The Rancor arrives and demolishes the second droid. Mando informs everyone that the Pikes are on the run. Peli accidentally reveals the Majordomo's hiding place and covers him as they escape. The Rakond handles the remaining Pikes as Cad arrives. He uses his flamethrower to scare away the Rancor, and Fett rises to face him. Cad reminds how far back they go, and asks him what his angle is with this operation. Fett repeats his intention to keep the people of Mos Espa safe. Cad again taunts him about the Tuskens and challenges him to draw. Fett loses, and Cad continues to taunt him about the fact that he is still a bounty hunter like his father, and a killer. As Cad is about to kill him, Fett uses his Tusken spear to trip Cad to the ground and disarm him. Cad tries to flame him as Fett stabs him through the chest with the spear. Though Cad lies motionless, a red light on his outfit continues to flicker and beep. The townspeople are shooting at the Rancor, who is running rampant through the city. Mando tries to calm the Rancor down, but only enrages it further. As the Rancor closes in on an unconscious Mando, Grogu steps out and uses the Force to bond with the Rancor. He calms it down and lays down to rest next to it. In Mos Eisley, the Pike Syndicate leader comments on how their forces should be arriving soon, at which point the Pikes will leave Tatooine. The families of Mos Espa are enraged that the Pikes will not help them despite their deal. The Pike leader says that their end of the deal was not held up, as Tatooine was not as hospitable as presumed. Suddenly shots are heard outside as the guards are taken out. After a brief silence, the three family heads are killed before the leader's personal guard. As Mok Shari's wanders around in fear, a cable is pulled around his neck and a crunching sound is heard before his legs go motionless. Fennec delivers the final blow, stabbing the Pike leader in the back. With the Pike Syndicate and the three families gone, several transports begin to arrive in Mos Espa. As Fett and Fennec walk through the town, its citizens greet them with gifts and praise. Fett comments that as nice as it may be, it isn't the kind of work he and Fennec are suited for. She asks who should take the reins then. And they meet with Chrysanthemum and the mods. Out in space. Mando leaves in the starfighter. With Grogu sitting in the droid pod. It is unknown what happens to R2-D2. Mando takes the ship into sub-light speed as the episode ends. Mid-credits. The mods use the Bacta tank for their operation.